What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of my hip hop review. Excuse me, my live and ready reviews and stuff like that, where I talk about significant live albums. The album I'm about to review tonight is David Bowie's first live album, David Live, released in 1974 on RCA Records. Singles album was known for only came out with one single, which was Knock on Wood, which is the cover song of the Eddie Floyd song and shit. Alright, so yeah, this album, okay. So I've talked about Hunky Dory, Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, Diamond Dogs, and I reviewed Station to Station. So excuse me. Alright, so this was released between Diamond Dogs and Young Americans and shit like that during the Diamond Dogs tour. So before I talk about the album, I'm gonna talk about the tour first. So the tour was of course in 1974 and shit like that, and it was like at the time one of his most elaborate tours and shit like that, because as Diamond Dogs was supposed to represent like an apocalyptic kind of viewpoint and whatnot, you had just a lot of, settings with like abandoned cities and shit like that. You had like, it was like more theatrical to say the least and shit, Excuse me. So it was more theatrical to say the least and shit like that. So it got to the point where at the time he was doing the tour, as I should say, this is around the time when this is around the time when they were trying to film for the tour and stuff like that. It was not like up to like the best quality, to say the least, and shit. So that's why when it comes to the Diamond Dogs tours, like the video quality is like very poor, and a lot of the backing vocals and the saxophone had to get overdubbed because the performance was like a bit off key and a bit off mic and shit like that. So there was like really no studio overdubs and shit like that, because due to the loss of the theater, mic contact and shit. So and the thing that was very important with this album was the sound. And what I mean by that is because the fact that with this album, it was kind of like his unofficial start of him experimenting with soul music and shit, which would be more evident with the Young Americans album. More evident with like the Young Americans album and shit like that. So, that's why like in the second half of the song, he's rearranged a lot of his songs and stuff like that to get for that more soul vibe and shit like that, because he did this part of the tour in Philadelphia and shit like that. And so that Philadelphia at that time was very much known for its soul music. Of course, with Philadelphia International and the stuff that, Tom Bell was doing and whatnot. And David Bowie would have help from another famous singer from Philly off his next album. I'm gonna keep that in the wraps because it might surprise a few of you guys. So with that being said, you can really hear like David Bowie like in his rawest form when it came to this album and shit. This is of course the album cover right here, and even like the album cover marks like a very big difference and shit, because of the fact that, as you've known David Bowie, he had like his wild hair and stuff like that, and wearing all these weird outfits. Whereas right here, his hair is like a lot more slick back. He's wearing like a lot more suits and shit like that, So yeah, he's just trying to transition his style, because when it happened, I think I've mentioned this in Diamond Dogs review, but when he was doing like that Ziggy Stardust performance and shit like that in '73, which was released as a movie in 1983. In 1983, if I'm not mistaken, he said that this was like his last performance and shit, you know. And a lot of people thought that he was retiring and shit like that, but he was just retiring the Ziggy Stardust persona. He was just retiring that Ziggy Stardust persona, and so that's how Diamond Dogs. I think the character there was like Halloween Jack. So the Diamond Dogs David Live was transitioning him into what would be known as the Thin White Duke era, which I've mentioned that before in the station review I've done a while back ago. So yeah. So that's how that album came about. And so with this album, you know, he was doing like a lot more solo arrangements and shit. So like just David Bowie doing this thing live and shit like that. If y'all can see it. Then you have this picture right here. And one I forgot to mention like some producers and the personnel, excuse me. Producers include Tony Visconti and shit like that, who produced for a lot of David Bowie's works, as you guys should know. In my opinion, he's one of the originators of the sound, if you ask me, but you guys should watch the videos to know what I'm talking about. The personnel include people like David Bowie on vocals, Errol Slick on guitar, Herbie Flowers on bass, Michael Cameron on electric piano, Moog, oboe and arrangements, Tony Newman on drums, Pablo Rosario on percussion, David Stanboard on alto sax and flute, Richard Grandel on baritone sax and flute, Mike Garson on piano and mellotron, Gree Adrisano backing vocals, and Warren Peace on backing vocals and shit. So yeah. I think there's some more things I have to say about this album. Yeah, I'm gonna save a lot of this. I'm gonna save a lot of this for after I talk about the album. But so with this album, with that being said, this album has about, well, if you got the OG copy, it has about 17 songs and shit. And since I've already reviewed the majority of the songs on previous albums, I'm going to talk about a certain few songs like I always do with these live albums, where I think the variations that caught my attention. So, where's my notes? Okay. Alright, so I want to talk about 1984. I felt like that was a very nice way to start off the fucking tour and shit like that. Love the keyboards that sprinkled out throughout the project, and especially that intro. That intro alone, man, was just amazing. I want to talk about the Sweet Thing song too, because my personal opinion, like you guys should know, Sweet Thing is like my favorite David Bowie song from the Diamond Dogs album. And this version did not disappoint me whatsoever. I felt like this version was a little more theatrical, to say the least. A lot more theatrical than the aforementioned album version and shit like that. So his version of Changes here was very good as well. His version of Changes here was very good. You can tell like his voice, you can tell he was a little hoarse with his voice and shit like that. I loved how he said, "And the children that you shit on, expect for spit on," and shit like that. So kind of thought that was pretty unique and shit. But other songs. You know, he did all the Young Dudes, the Hoopy cover. And so once you get to side 3, that's when the soul kicks in mostly, you know. I mean, soul was always sneaking in a little bit towards the end of side 2, but like you had the cover of Knock on Wood, which I'm not really the biggest fan of that song. I've never really been the biggest fan of that song, but his version was not that bad either and shit. Version was really not that bad. And another dope song, which probably my favorite live cut from this album, was the Gene Genie. especially that little intro, like that doom, 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 doom. And then like once you start seeing the first couple of lines, I loved how the audience members was just like catching on to that shit. You know what I'm saying? And that's one thing I love about live albums. Different versions of like already known songs and exclusively on this album and shit. So yeah, man, that's all I want to really talk about with this album because I just want to talk about just a few tracks. Okay, now at the time this album was released, it was his worst reviews to date and shit like that. It's like they were praising like the guest members like Earl Slick and David Sanborn more and stuff like that. Whereas when it came to like David Bowie, they felt like he was just doing too much by doing the soul music and shit like that. They didn't, cause David Bowie's always been like an experimental artist, to say the least, and so with his album and shit like that, he really caught a lot of people off guard and shit like that, which he would catch them off guard with the next album and stuff, but yeah, man, it's just like even to this day the album still kind of gets is first shitted on and shit like that. I just realized and stuff, but hell, even Mick Jagger this fucking album and stuff like that. And David Bowie, from what I've looked up, he was just so overwhelmed by like the bad reviews that he didn't even listen to this album. I don't think he ever listened to this album and shit. And so at that time his cocaine usage was, beginning and stuff like that. Cause he was just trying to be that great, but yeah, I'm definitely going to the Young Americans album sometime next month. Cause I have a lot more albums to get over. So this is David Bowie with David Live, released in 1974. This album has been re-released a couple of times and shit like that. It was first reissued on CD in 1990. Then it was reissued again in 2005. And then at the time of his death, it was again re-released and shit like that. And speaking of live albums, another different live album was released like a year after he died called Cracked Actor Live Los Angeles and shit like that, 74. And that was released in 2017 on Record Store Day. Fuck that day, by the way. That album, it was a lot. The sound quality on that live album was a lot more better than this album and shit like that. In other words, and shit like that. If you guys like this album, or if you guys don't like this album, then give Cracked Actor a chance and shit like that. And so that is David Bowie Live. Stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Peace. And make sure y'all click that subscribe button as well.